Okay, good morning. I'm Adam Metz from PandaDoc, and before we get started, I wanted to remind all of you what to do if the screen share on your Maestro conference begins to look funky or weird to you. So it's very simple. All you need to do is just refresh your browser, and that doesn't matter whether you're using Chrome, Firefox, or Internet Explorer. So if you have any issues with the screen, just refresh your browser real quick. And I'll also be in the chat on the side there. And if you perhaps do not want to see the chat, all you need to do there is X out of the chat window. It's in the top right-hand corner there. So chat is totally optional. There's hundreds of folks on the line this morning. And if you've been wondering what it takes to be successful in today's changing sales world, you're going to want to listen up. And we'll be recording this too, just in case you have a friend that would like to hear it or a colleague. Jill Konrath, our speaker today, has some ideas that are going to change your thinking, literally. She's an internationally recognized sales strategist, and she's a best-selling author of Snap Selling and Selling to Big Companies. And I'm actually looking at a copy of her book, Agile Selling, the brand new one. And today she's here to talk about strategies from that book. It's her newest book, Agile Selling. It came out about 2 months ago, and it immediately soared to the #1 sales book spot on Amazon. And as a little background, Jill's been featured on ABC News, Fox, Forbes, Fortune, Entrepreneur, New York Times, and dozens of other publications. Everywhere you look, you see her name these days. I actually see people reading her books on airplanes all the time. And there's a good reason for it. She's on the front edge of what it takes to be successful today with fresh strategies that are going to help you stay at the top of your game. So Jill, thanks for being here today, and I will now turn it over to Jill Konrath.
Well, thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me. And Adam, I just want to say that one of my fantasies in life is to see somebody reading one of my books on an airplane. And as of yet, I haven't seen it. So you and I are going to have to switch some flights because I really, really want to see what you're seeing. So for those of you who are here today, we're here to talk about QuickStart strategies for overnight sales success. I know that if you are here right now, it is because you are involved in something new, because that's how we advertise this session, is for people who are going through something new. Some of you may be in a new sales position. Some of you may be selling new products and services. You're excited because your company has just come out with some really sweet technology or some services that filled some gaps that you had in your product offering. You might be new in sales, and you might be even have a new promotion where you're going after new markets or new customer types. But whatever it is, the excitement of new is really, really fun. But it also comes at a price, and that's what I want to talk about next. The reality of it is, what we deal with is a tsunami of information when things are new. Anytime you're involved in something new, it's oftentimes overwhelming what you have to deal with. You have information coming at you from every direction, or you just know that there's so much to learn, and you honestly don't know where to start, but you know that it's a ton. So say you've taken that new sales position, and you have to go in and you have to learn new systems in the company. They have different ways of doing things. Their CRM is different. Their ordering thing is different. Their configuration, their pricing, and all that surrounding, you have to learn it all. And sometimes you may be just given a ton of information in the company and told to dig in. Sometimes you may be lucky and have some training programs, but it still doesn't cover everything that you need to know. And sometimes you may be not so lucky and have to do it all yourself. But the reality of it is, every one of us can succeed in a new position if we know what to do. Because I want to tell you how I discovered what I'm going to be talking about today, how to get up to speed quickly in a new sales position, selling new products and services, or anything else that might be new. My background, for those of you who don't know me, I started with Xerox, moved into technology sales, and then moved into services sales before I started my own consultancy. The reason I started my own consulting business was because there was a gap that I saw in working with all the companies I'd been with, and it was really related to new product launch. And every company I was working with virtually would come out with a new product and service, and then they'd throw it over the wall to the salespeople and say, here you guys go, here's everything you need to sell it, and they'd give you, literature. They might tell you about the product and service, or, have some big meeting where they did a lot of hoo-ha, but they just threw it over the wall to salespeople. And what I saw was that it was taking salespeople so much longer to ramp up with the new product launch than it was necessary. And it was all because the process wasn't done right. And so I actually built a consultancy around product launches, and for many, many years I was working with 10 to 12 companies a year on product launches, selling to new markets, new clients, new industries, new products, new services. Everything was new. And what I had to do in order to be successful is I had to figure out how to do it fast, because my job with the product launch was to take this new product and then work with the salespeople so that they would know what they had to do in order to be successful. So I became a rapid learner, and I realized in the process that there was a methodology to learning that most people had no idea even existed. They just meandered through everything that they had to know and hoped that it would stick, or thought maybe perhaps osmosis was the key to doing it. Just being around the smart people would make a difference. But that's not true. One of the first things that I found out in working on all these new product launches, and by the way, I probably have sold, because of the work I did, I probably sold more different products to different industries than anybody else in their entire career. And I realized that the brain had limitations. Now, I'm talking about my brain initially, but neuroscience has shown that it's not just me, that it's a human condition, that our brain really truly does have limitations. It's only capable of doing so many things at once. It's only capable of remembering in certain ways. And if we don't understand our brain and how it's functioning, we are actually making it much, much harder for ourselves. And so what I'm going to be showing you and some of the strategies really relate to brain functionality. And the first one we're going to talk about is really about the inability of the brain to remember it all. Anytime you're new, you have so much to learn. And one of the first strategies that you really need to embrace when you're new is to stop keeping things in your head. It doesn't work, because here's what's happening. The brain, again, with all this stuff that you're being immersed in, is trying to hold on to all of it. And what it does is it actually slows down your retention if it's all swirling around. It's like the brain is saying, remember this, remember that, remember this, don't forget this. And then what you're focusing on right now doesn't get the attention it actually needs. And it makes it much, much harder to remember it 2 weeks from now, much less later on in that afternoon. So one of the first strategies that you have to remember is never to try to remember anything. You need to set up a system, whether it's on paper, whether it's online, whether it's through mind mapping or whatever, where you dump things out of your brain and you only focus your brain on learning what you have to learn now so that you can learn it rapidly. Some of the things that I've seen people do, mind mapping, which I'll show you an example of soon, but also creating checklists, cheat sheets, memory cards to test themselves on. I've seen people do a whole lot of things, but the one thing that I can tell you is you have to get it out of your head and someplace, store it online, in Evernote, someplace where you can access it later. And the best thing you can do, by the way, is to tag it. And the reason I say that, tag it, I mean tag it in a way that you can find how to find it again in your brain. It's like adding words like sales, specific product, customer need, and the key words that you would use to retrieve that information later. The reason you want to do that is because your brain is a sloppy filer, and you have to tell it where it should be putting things. So you are creating your own filing system by dumping things out and into this filing system that you create. And then what you want to do when you're selling something new is you actually want to commit to a 30-day deep dive. And a 30-day deep dive really is exactly what I'm talking about. It is throwing yourself into learning about this new thing that you're selling with as much as you can. There's a real goal of a 30-day deep dive, and it's what I call situational credibility. It's the ability to be able to have an effective conversation where you sound like a credible resource with a potential prospect who could be a good opportunity for you. You don't have to know it all, but what you do have to know are certain things in order to have that conversation. And this is where we have to start sorting things out, because again, you have that tsunami of information that is overwhelming you, but you can't learn it all. You have to figure out what do you need to know in order to be able to have that conversation where you sound like an intelligent resource with a potential buyer of your product and services. The first thing that you actually need to do then is to chunk things out. And in the next slide, we will see the chunking strategy. And I've got a mind map here. And here is a mind map of the different things that you actually need to know when you are doing something. If you look here, your brain is trying to remember all these things. There's everything you need to know about your product or service. There's things you need to know about the new company if you're with the new company. There's things you really need to know about the customer. And there's things that you need to know about selling itself. All of these are things that you need to know when something's new. But if you come with a deep background, you'll have less to learn. But for those of you who are new to the game or new in this company, you have a huge task in front of you. So start chunking out your learning and saying, okay, here's what I need to know. Now I have to dig into some of these. Again, it's a lot. So what we want to do is go to the next slide because I think that's really crucial. This is overwhelming. We're trying to get rid of the overwhelming feeling. The key is sequencing. In sequencing, we have to say, of all this information that's available that I have to learn about, what do I need to know now? Because some things you don't need to know now. For example, if you took a look at the sales process, while there's a gazillion things that you could be learning, the reality is what you need to learn is how to get prospects first. And if you don't have any prospects, closing skills or negotiation skills are like totally irrelevant. What you need to learn first in anything that you're studying right now is you need to learn, whoa, we're going way back. We want to go, in the sequence thing, we want to go to the thing that you really need to focus on first, and that is on the next slide. This is the thing that people omit all the time. And this, yet, to me, from a sales perspective, is the biggest piece of knowledge that you need to know, and that is, who is your biggest competitor? The biggest competitor is not who you think it is. Your biggest competitor is the status quo. And to me, this is like the most essential information that you ever need to know. What are you up against? Because people are doing things some way, somehow, right now. Now, if you're selling technology, which some of you are, they may be using a competitive system. If you're selling virtually any product or service, they're working perhaps with a competitor, perhaps with an older version of the competitor. If we can go back one slide to the competitor, we're still staying there. They're working with an older version of the competitor. They're doing it themselves, which is true as well. And there's so many things we need to know about that, because your job is to get them to switch. And getting people to switch from the status quo is the hardest thing in the world. It's much harder than beating a competitor. So you need to know, what are they currently doing right now? What are the upsides and downsides to it? What can't they do that they might want to do? What issues is it causing in their business right now? Where are they having problems? You need to immerse yourself in the status quo, because it's how you're going to get people to change, and your knowledge there is crucial. And I want to delve into that as well, because again, this is a gap that I see in virtually every organization that I'm working with, is a lack of good customer insights. People don't study their customers enough. Now, I just talked about the status quo, and that's what your customers are doing without your product and service. And by the way, they're getting along fine without you. They're just doing it some other way. But when I'm talking about customer insights, I'm talking about things like the people who you're actually calling on in that organization. I'm talking about the decision makers, the people who say yes or no. Now, in most decisions today, if you're calling on the corporate market, there are multiple buyers, and I don't mean purchasing agents, I mean people who are involved in the buying process. There are multiple people involved, and you need to know, who are these people? What are their roles and responsibilities? Now, here's where it really gets crucial. It's not just roles and responsibilities. It's what are their goals and objectives. These people are measured on something at the end of the day, and you need to know what it is, because until you know that kind of information, you don't know how to best approach them. You need to know their strategic initiatives, what they're trying to achieve out there. You need to know what makes it difficult for them to reach their goals, internally in their organization as well as externally. All these kinds of things are like crucial for your ability to be successful in selling to these people, because the more you know about your customers, the better chance you'll have of crafting messaging, having conversations, etc., that cannot be ignored. So now I'm going to go to some very specific things that you can do in order to gain this information. And I often find that people say, well, this is really nice to know, Jill, but I don't have this information available to me, or certainly not the information that I need to know. You don't need to try to be superhuman. I mean, when I see people, when they're new in new situations, they don't want to look bad. And so they're really trying very hard to be impressive to their new boss or customers. But the reality is, anytime that there's something new, there is a grace period where you're given time to learn. And so the key for anybody who is listening in is to take advantage of that grace period and to allow yourself to be a learner and to be not afraid of saying, I don't get this and I'm I need some help here. Who can you go to, though, for help? I'm going to tell you a couple places. Everybody says to go to the old pros. Go to see Bob. He's been here forever. Well, Bob may have some really good insights, but if you go to see Bob, you better have some very specific questions, probably related to understanding the customer, because Bob has deep customer insights, the issues and challenges that the customers are facing. Bob knows that stuff really well. He's the guy who's been around, had a long-term success, and understands what's happening out there. But I would suggest that there are some other people in an organization that can be highly valuable, and one is the group that I call the upstarts. And the upstarts are people who have been hired in the last year or two, and they're doing well. These are people who have come in and jumped in and had fairly rapid success. These people know what it takes to sell in today's buying environment, or today's busy environment, whereas Bob may know, but Bob may have the best customers in the world and may not understand what it takes to build an entirely new portfolio or to get a whole new base of customers. So you need to go after the upstarts who could learn. There are also people in your organization who are customer-facing, like technical people, customer support people who may have some really good insight into your customers or their current situation, the status quo, than you might have. And finally, don't forget, you have customers. You have people who are using your information or your technology or your services. And I've often found the best people to talk to are customers who've switched to your company's products or services within the last 6 months, because they're able to compare you with the status quo. They know what it was like using another vendor, using the older system, they're doing it themselves versus using what you bring to the table. So they're often incredible resources. So go out and have conversations, because the key for you to being successful is to really understand your customer, because it's not about pitching your products. It's about having conversations with individuals who work in an environment where there's a status quo and are looking to achieve goals. This is why I'm grounding you here, because this is what's essential. It's what's missing in just about any time people are doing anything new. They rush out and say, here's our pitch and tell them about this, but they don't focus in on what makes people change from what they're doing. I'd like to say that there are some things that you can do to make this job of learning much easier for yourself. And the first thing I'd suggest here is that you focus on connecting what you're learning with what you already know. For those of you who have been in other sales jobs, how is this new company, how is this new buyer similar to the kind of people that you've worked with before? For those of you who happen to be learning new technology, a lot of people I work with right now are looking at LinkedIn. They're going, I just kind of don't get it. Some are dabbling with it a little. Some are really, really making great use out of it. But the key to being successful with LinkedIn is not getting panicked by the technology, but seeing how it really connects with what you've done in the past and how you've reached out and worked and networked with people previously before this technology existed. So the key to learning new information is to root it in something that's similar to what you've done before. And the more you can stop and do that, the better off you'll be. Let's take a look at the next slide now, because this to me now gets into the exciting part. What we have done is we have immersed you in a 30-day immersion process where you have done a deep dive in understanding your customer. What is their status quo? How are they currently doing things? What are their issues and concerns? Who are these buyers? What's going on in their world? What initiatives do they have? Now we know what matters to them. And if you're new and you know what matters to people, then you're still able to have that conversation with them. But it only comes because you understand what difference that you can make. So what you do then is you take that good information that you've uncovered and you start turning it into value propositions, into messaging, into questions, and into presentations. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term value proposition, it's a clear statement of the business outcomes that somebody gets from using your product or service. A clear statement of the outcomes. What results did they get from working with you? Now, if you understand the results that people got from working with you, the success stories, the use cases, then you can craft messaging that, whether it's an email message or a voicemail message, that really hones in on what that VP of sales is interested in, if that's your primary or one of your primary buyers, or that really focuses in on what's relevant and helpful to the director of HR. Good messaging today is based on the customer. It is not about your stuff. You don't want to sound like a product pushing peddler. What you want to sound like is an intelligent, credible resource. And again, we've talked about establishing situational credibility, which means you have to know this stuff. So good messaging today might start out by saying, in my work with other VPs of sales, one of the key things they're struggling with today is pipeline, getting enough good prospects in their pipeline. Or I see that in the paper. I noticed that your company is going through a recent acquisition, and one of the big challenges that causes for systems, people with systems, is X. You're showing that you're a credible resource. You've immersed yourself in what's happening. You've come up with messaging that immediately jumps in and shows that you're not pushing anything, that you don't want to sell them anything, but instead you want to have a conversation with them about something that is relevant to their business right now, that ties into their goals and objectives, that helps them eliminate the issues that may be facing. And that, when they get messages like that, they're so different. Most people sit with their finger on the delete button and are on their phone and on email, and the average email delete takes place within 2.7 seconds. So that's how long people are actually. That's how long it actually takes people to make that decision if they're going to delete somebody or listen to them. That's not very long, and on the phone it's maybe 5 to 7 seconds as people listen to one sentence at a time. So we need to craft that messaging that is relevant, and it has to be short and sweet and tight and get right to the point. The other thing we need to do is we need to plan our conversations with people, and conversations are based on having good questions. It's also based on being able to set up a conversation by saying, sharing a story of how your company has worked with others in the past and the results that you've achieved, which is why we've sent you into learning the customer stories. But the questions then focus on their goals and their objectives. It focuses on their status quo and some of the issues that are relevant or likely to be relevant, or other customers have said are relevant as they've switched. And the questions become the conversation, not about what your company does, your stuff that you sell, but about them and their business and what they're trying to do. And finally, the same thing can be said about the presentation. You're launching a new product. It's not about the new product. It's about the difference that the new product makes for them. And that's why we had to send you into that 30-day deep dive to really become an expert on your customer at that particular in that particular zone, in an area where you can have an impact. So these are how it all pulls together. But it's all crucial on you stepping in and learning fast. Learning isn't just about putting stuff in your head. Learning is also about delivery and practicing as a salesperson. Do not ever, ever, ever think that you can just wing it. You can't, especially when you're learning something new. New is the worst. Our mouth becomes mush mouth, and we try to explain things to people, and it just always comes out wrong. Even if somebody says, well, what does your company do? Blah, blah, blah. Or tell me about your new product. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, we just are horrid that way, and I am the same way, so I know that this is not just a unique phenomena to you. It's me too. We have to find the verbiage, and we have to be able to explain things. So one of the things I tell people is to take the gobbledygook test. Go ahead and say this stuff till you can say it so it sounds pretty decent. or you think it does, and then you have to go test it on other people. You, me, all of us, we can't hear ourselves, so we need to bounce it off somebody else who can listen as if they were the customer. As if they were the customer. Same thing with messaging. You need to send out messaging, leave phone calls, but you need to have them heard by somebody else who can give you feedback in terms of how effective it is. Did it make them want to listen, or would they have deleted you? And then when it goes to meetings and conversations, you need to role play that too. And anybody who thinks that not doing that, they hate role playing, the truth of the matter is I hate role playing too, but I hate role playing in front of a customer even worse, because I am blowing an opportunity then. And I hope you understand that practicing is the only way that you'll get better. And finally, I'd like to close by just saying a few other things. To me, this is the other thing that ties in with your learning, and that is really about your time. We've given you 30 days to do the deep dive, to establish that credibility, but 30 days is not nearly sufficient overall. But during that 30 days, we want to make sure that you're able to get as much into that brain as possible, to learn as many skills as possible. And what you need to do is realize that you cannot jump back and forth between activities. So if you're going to be spending time learning, you need to block off some learning time where nothing else goes on. And I mean nothing else, like not checking email. It's crucial, you guys. By jumping back and forth between activities, it takes you 20 to 40% longer to learn things. That's huge, 20 to 40% longer. So if you want to be a rookie for as long as possible, that just jump back and forth. It's going to take you that much longer. Or instead, block off time where you can really focus. And I know many of you have jobs where you actually, you're expected to produce and get to work and get out there making calls right away. I know for those of you who are launching new products, you have to get on the phone right away. But do take some time to stop and think before you do this, because otherwise you will flunk the gobbledygook test. You won't be doing and saying what's right. And spend time alone. Away from others where you can't be stimulated by anything else. We all have a shiny object syndrome. We all, when things get a little tough, want to jump to something easy. I know when I get stuck, I find myself wanting to check email. It's a natural human thing. I actually have to shut that program down, and sometimes I have to literally leave my computer behind and go to a place where I am unable to touch it. The other thing you should be doing, this is crucial too, because prioritization is really a hungry part of your brain, and it takes up more mental energy than any other function that your brain has. And so what you really need to do is to ensure that you prioritize at the beginning of the day, that you sit down, the first thing you do before you even start and check your email is know what you're going to be doing for the day. So this is what prioritization is all about. You have to prioritize what do you need now, what do you have to get done today, the top 3 things, so you can focus on doing that. If you wait and get sucked into everything else, you will have less processing power. You won't make the better decisions. And so really it's one of the most crucial things you can do. The key in all this is we're trying to get you to become an overnight expert. And the reality is I know that you can't become an expert in overnight. That's the reality. But what I do know is that nobody has taught us how to learn. Most of us are just meandering through all this new stuff, doing the best we know how, and it's oftentimes kind of muddled and slow. And like I said at the beginning, I had to learn how to do this. I had to learn what needed to happen, when it needed to happen, and found that when I focused on the process and focused on learning exactly what I was talking about learning right now, today, the status quo, the customer, and I focused on having to learn and test and my gobbledygook test and the whole works, I actually got better much faster. Now, I heard a statement a while back, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but to me it's crucial. And it basically said the secret to long-term success is short-term success. And I truly believe that. That's why everything I do is focused on helping people get good fast. The key to long-term success is short-term success, and that's because if you get good fast, you will expedite everything else. But if you are slow in getting good, you will start doubting yourself, or you'll start doubting your company's product and services. You'll start doubting the job that you're in. You'll start doubting everything, and pretty soon you'll be looking elsewhere to try to find something else that might be easier for you to tackle. But the key is to really throw yourself in and become the learner and learn the process.
From PandaDoc, guys and gals, just saying good morning to all the people in the States, good afternoon to the folks in Europe, and good evening to everyone in Asia and overseas. If we could go to the next slide for a second, just wanted to show you a little something that Sajad, my colleague at PandaDoc, put together. Essentially, if you'd like to start saving a little bit of time in your day-to-day while you're selling, one way to do that is to spend a lot less time working on the sales busy work, things like proposals, quotes, things like that. And so for anyone who's on this webinar today, we actually have a special link for you at PandaDoc. And so let me pull that up right now. So to get to it, you just go to the PandaDoc website, and then there's a special promotion actually for any of Jill's readers or webinar attendees. It's really easy. You just go to pandadoc.com/Jill Konrath. Again, it's pandadoc.com/Jill Konrath. And there's basically a $50 gift card sitting on that page. It's really neat. And so that will let you take care of all your electronic document signatures and even things like a PowerPoint. If you want to send that to a client to see if they're liking what your company is selling, you're going to get some really great document analytics on it, and you'll see what slides they liked, what slides they didn't really look at, that kind of thing. So feel free to spend a couple of months playing with PandaDoc, totally on the house, courtesy of Jill. Again, it's pandadoc.com/Jill Konrath. And now back to you, Jill, for Q&A.
All right, and if we can go to the last slide, we'll just take a few questions from people from the audience. And I believe that if you raise your hand, you actually get to ask a question live on the phone. It's not like you type in a question. But I want to get to that last page, which has the questions on it. So if any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask based on what we talk about today, I am here, and we'll be here for another 10 minutes answering your questions. I do want to say, before the questions come in, that everything we talked about today is featured in my new book called Agile Selling. You can download a preview of the book at agileSellingBook.com. You just go there and you can download the first few chapters and to actually see what this whole thing is about. I truly believe that it's crucial that we focus on learning today. It's not, like I said earlier, it's not something we've talked about. It's certainly not something that we learned in school, where our key to success was remembering when the War of 1812 was fought in and be able to answer that on a test, and to be able to say who was buried in Grant's tomb. That's how our school taught us. In sales today, we need to be smarter, and we need to actually be rapid learners in control of our destiny, because all that makes a huge difference. So do we have anybody who's raised their hand and wants to ask me a question?
So if you do want to raise your hand, it's pretty easy. There's two ways to do it. If you're looking in the web interface, you can just go to the very top of the web interface to raise your hand, or the other way to do it, and that button is on the top left-hand corner there. It's right next to where it says chat. And if you're on your telephone, generally you can press the 1 button on your phone, and that will also raise your hand to see if you have a question. And Aubrey from the Maestro Conference team will help. Will unmute your microphone, and then you can ask Jill. Jill, one question that I actually had is, when you were working on Agile Selling, because I know you do a ton of sales consulting. The thing I was wondering is, why did sales VPs, when you met with them and EVPs and stuff like that, why did they tell you that this was the key issue in sales performance, or how did they figure out that this was the number one issue holding back people from achieving sales success, in their first 12 months? How did they determine this was like the worst problem?
Well, I think if you take a look at the turnover in the first few months of any sales job, and you take a look at the ramp-up time in a sales position. I was just reading some statistics recently that showed that 50% of the companies out there have a ramp-up time of 10 months or longer, and what they wanted to do is get their people productive in a much shorter period of time. So you have two issues. Is somebody going to make it, and how can I get people productive sooner? Because 10 months is a long time for 50% of the sales forces to know if somebody is going to be able to make it. That's the length of their sales cycle or their ramp-up time. So ramp-up time, onboarding, turnover, all those factors are a key issue. But also I think for any individual who's listening in, This is a key issue because it's about your path to proficiency. It's about your career. It's about getting good faster, and it's about not quitting on yourself before you've given yourself an opportunity to actually be successful. I mean, everything I write is for individuals, and it's really good if it benefits companies, but I write for individuals who are in charge of their own learning, who are in charge of their own development, and whose success depends on their taking the bull by the horns and running with it. And that's really what Agile Selling is all about.
And Sajjad actually had a question along those lines around the whole professional development piece. He was wondering, because he's a marketing guy, Sajjad, but he's been brought into some sales deals lately. He's just kind of getting new at selling. What if your boss or your new sales manager says to you, hey, Bill, you don't really have much of a professional development budget? What do you do if you're working for one of those sales managers or one of those companies that just doesn't send you to the cool sales conferences and the good trainings? How do you deal with that?
Well, that's the situation that most people in the world are in right now. I mean, if you're one of the lucky few who has a company that pays for you to go to things, hallelujah. But most people aren't in that position, and they have to take charge of it. That's why, like in the beginning here, I showed you that there are certain things that you can do, that you can break it down and you can say, here's what I have to learn, now I have to dig in. There are some really good books out there. I would say, quite frankly, I would say that anybody can focus on getting better themselves if they take the effort. I would read books. I would find out who are the sales experts out there online. I would start reading people's newsletters. YouTube has some really good things. So there's a ton of good information out there. What I would personally suggest people do is not flip-flop from one thing to another, but immerse themselves in some sort of methodology and process so that they can get good. So find one or two people who really speak to you. I mean, they're selling the kind of things that you're selling. They understand the market that you're selling in, and really dig deep there and learn what they have to say and follow them and continue to grow. And go to webinars like this. There's a lot of free stuff out there that anybody who is willing to learn can take advantage of and get better.
And we have actually, I think, about 6 minutes left, and we have like 9 people with their hands raised. So I guess the next one, Aubrey, can you turn on the live Q&A, because we have a line waiting for you still.
Okay, we have Queenie on the line, and she has a question. Go ahead, Queenie.
Hello, can you actually hear me?
I can hear you, Queenie.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering how some of your selling strategies could relate to a fundraising role.
And can you tell me what you're fundraising? What kind of things?
For education, a private girls' school.
Okay. And you need to get money from people?
Yes.
Or you need to get people to donate money for a cause, correct?
Yes. Yes.
All right, let me just say a couple things. What's in it for them? I mean, stop and think. These are people, why would they want to donate? What value would they get from personally donating? You need to step into your potential donors' shoes and say what's in it for them and why would they want to. You might want to talk to people who have donated in the past and found out, what it was that made them want to become a part of it. I think one of the key things in selling anything is to understand stories, and if you can personalize things. So rather than talking about, that it will, it's some amorphous thing, you might talk about, and I see this, people that are doing things to save dogs. They show pictures of real dogs, or they tell a story about one person who is really sick and needs help. So you can focus in on something like that. The other thing I would strongly suggest is I talked about practice. And I don't think people who are in fundraising really think about practicing, but it's really essential that you role play what you're doing and you test out your messaging and you think about everything that you do is I need to test it to figure out what way is working. And whenever you're doing testing, I would suggest that you sit in the shoe of the buyer, the donor in your case, and say, if I received this message, would I open it if I had 100 other messages there? If I received this phone call and got this message, would I call somebody back? If somebody said this to me on the phone, would I continue listening, or would I promptly say, thanks, but we already give to the Red Cross? So you need to kind of constantly be testing and being serious about this. It's not just that we're doing it. It's like we're doing it because we have a goal and we need to get good at it. We need to figure out what's working. Hopefully that helps, gives you some ideas.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yes. And anybody else who's got a question out there?
Are we just like 5 more, right? I just want to make sure we get everybody in.
Okay, we've got Michael Craig.
Sure.
Michael, are you there?
Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, I am there. I am kind of an old school sales guy. My company's, provided me printed materials, which I'm bringing out, but some of the salespeople are using tablets, and I'm in the Bay Area, and I kind of have to have a tablet because I look kind of silly going out there when my competitors have the technology. Okay. And
yeah.
But I'm not Mac savvy, and I'm trying to figure out what's a good technology to start with for somebody who's not into Mac. But I've used PC for years, and I have no PowerPoint. But I got to go out there and show the mobile app that we have. I got to be able to show a presentation, I think, on a tablet. Do you have any recommendations for somebody who wants to learn fast, and what's a good technology for a tablet to bring out in the sales appointment?
Can I just ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Are there any other guys in your own company who are doing this?
Yeah, they are. These are people, they're all out of state. There isn't anybody, they're out there in the field most of the time, so it's hard to get some of these guys to chat. But, they're all Apple people, so I'm not an Apple. So I got to find somebody who's not an Apple or not a Mac that can talk to me about maybe using PC tablet, because my guys are Apple people, and I've tried to use one, and it's not user friendly to me for whatever reason. But I need somebody who is used to using a tablet that's not an Apple.
Okay. There's a couple things here, and one of them is you're throwing up, I don't understand the Apple thing. And believe me, I am a non-tech person myself, so I totally get the factor, okay? Like, I don't get it. And my husband shows me his PC, and I do that to him, okay? So I totally get what you're saying. And let me just say that you could probably, if you sat down side by side with somebody for about an hour, hour and a half, you could probably get it all figured out. But you got to know what you want to learn from them. That you have an app for your company. Is that what I understand?
There's a mobile app, and they can go to. I want to show them our website when I'm out in the field as well. So I need to have a device that I can have Wi-Fi and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would actually look at what your guys currently in your company are doing, and I would have them walk you through it as much as possible.
Yeah.
And whatever you can. Because they're already doing stuff, huh?
It's unfortunately there's nobody. I am the one guy representing the Bay Area. My closest person would be in L.A. So there really isn't anybody local that I could sit next to.
No, but what you can do is you can sit with them, and you could get on a live meeting, like with GoToMeeting. You can sometimes do live meetings, or with Skype if you know any of that, and you can have them walk you through and say, here, look, go here. What we want to do is have somebody walk you through it, if at all possible, so you don't have to look at it and stare at it. And you do need somebody to walk you through it, but I would do what your other colleagues are doing so you can refer and work with them in the future about where it's going, as opposed to doing something over there. I would really suggest that you go in with what the other guys are doing in your company. You probably didn't want to hear that.
There isn't any uniformity. My direct report is using PC, but some of the salespeople are using Mac, so there isn't any really company policy. It's whatever you like to use type of thing.
Oh, okay. Well, then I don't know where your best resource is, and I think it's really a function of you choosing one thing and then throwing yourself in and committing the time. That's where you're going to have the hard thing, because you don't want to do it. You hate it, right? So you're going to have to throw yourself in, and you're going to have to say, God dang it, I'm going to have to sit down, and I'm not leaving. I'm blocking off this afternoon. I'm going to work on this stuff this afternoon. So you literally are going to have to block off some time and force yourself to do it. And let me tell you, it does get better over time. But you may end up taking 5 to 10 hours to get some of the basic stuff done, but it does get better over time. But you have to block off the time, because you will think of every other reason in the world, everything else that needs to get done except that, right?
Yeah, I like the Skype idea. I can do the Skype, so that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, you can hold things up in front of there and show each other and do this and there's a lot you can do. So figure out how to do it, but block time on your calendar and make it so you have to sit down and learn it, because you won't learn it otherwise.
All righty, thank you.
You're welcome.
And do we have time for one more, Bill? Or are we?
Yes, I will kick one more butt.
All right, one more butt.
We have Becky on the line.
It's going to be.
Becky?
Okay, we got Becky on the line now.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can, Becky.
Okay. My question is, on LinkedIn, what is a great question to ask a variety of people who work in the same profession when you're trying to find out more clearly what their needs are.
Like in a group?
Yeah, so my target market are therapists who treat people with eating disorders.
Okay.
Because I want to help the mothers of their clients. And I want to know what kind of problems the mothers of their clients give them.
So why don't you ask that question? That's good. But I would ask it in a link. I mean, just you could say, I work with mothers and of these people, and I'm really curious. What are the big questions and concerns that you have here from the mothers?
Okay,
because I want to
awesome.
I want to help them better. Just ask the question. And are you in a LinkedIn group where it's composed of all those people?
Yes.
Okay, well that's perfect. And join a couple other groups too. You'll find more. Also think of posting other questions that you'd like to ask too, because I really have found that LinkedIn groups are a great place to get some insights into people that you wouldn't normally get if you were talking to them in person. And you can get answers from people in other parts of the world, and they don't care because they know you're not going to call them, so they're truthful and they're insightful.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Well, Adam, I think that about does it, doesn't it? We've kind of hit our time limit here.
Yeah, that's about as many butts as we can kick in 48 minutes. So I think we'll probably have to do this again soon. And also remember, if anyone has a question that we didn't get answered right away on the webinar, let's definitely tweet it up. We're going to be on Twitter for the rest of the day. I'm the Mets and PandaDoc. And Jill, what's your Twitter handle?
At Jill Konrath.
Okay, so if there's anything you missed, come get us there. And, of course, if you'd like to take advantage of the PandaDoc Jill Konrath offer, just pandadoc.com/Jill Konrath. Jill, any parting words?
No, I just really want people to take charge of their own learning. I mean, if you're here, you're doing something new, you want to learn something new, take charge of it. Don't just meander around hoping that you'll learn this stuff. I mean, figure out how to learn so you can get through this awkward period as quickly as humanly possible. And the more you take charge of your learning, the faster you'll get through it.
Awesome. Thanks for coming and joining us today. And pick up Jill's new book, Agile Selling, on Amazon. I read it in about one day, so enjoy. See you all soon.